Hi everyone. Today I want to discuss the use of the transabdominal ultrasound in pregnancy. So the goals for this presentation are to recognize the indications for transabdominal ultrasound in pregnancy, for selecting the correct probe and patient positioning to best assess the uterus and adnexa. And we also wanted to discuss the adnexal assessment and general fetal calculations, including things like gestational age, using the crown rump length, biparietal diameter, and femur length, and then the fetal heart rate. Indications for using a transabdominal ultrasound are confirmation of intrauterine pregnancy, which is very useful if a patient is having vaginal bleeding, abdominal or pelvic pain in pregnancy, a positive pregnancy test without prior imaging or other follow-up for the known positive pregnancy test, as well as assessment of the fetus after maternal trauma or severe illness, and gestational age estimations. It's also very useful for ectopic pregnancy, and if a patient presents with lower abdominal pain and unstable vital signs concerning for ruptured ectopic, is useful for looking for free fluid in the pelvis, which can also help after trauma. So for positioning, being supine is ideal. The patient may be more comfortable tilted toward their left side if they are later in pregnancy to avoid the IVC compression. We want them to have a full bladder to help visualize the windows of the uterus, especially in early pregnancy. And for the probe selection, we want to select the curvilinear probe, which is the 2 to 5 megahertz probe. In transabdominal ultrasound in pregnancy, there are 3 primary views we want to get. The first view is a longitudinal or sagittal view. And in this view, the probe is held up vertically with the indicator toward the patient's head. And here you will sweep entirely from the patient's right side to the left side to visualize the entire uterus and the fetus within the uterus. The exact positioning of the probe does depend on the gestational age, because earlier in pregnancy, the uterus is more low down in the pelvis, so you'll need to move the probe appropriately down in the pelvis compared to later in pregnancy when the uterus is higher up in the abdomen. The second primary view we want to get is the transverse or axial view, which is when the probe is held horizontally, so you can rotate 90 degrees from the initial sagittal plane you saw, and then sweep superiorly to inferiorly to visualize the entire fetus. And in this case, the indicator should be always toward the patient's right. The third view is the adnexa, which you want to obtain by looking in the transverse position and sweeping the probe to fully visualize the adnexa. And here you're looking for things like large cysts or other masses, as well as a pregnancy which is ectopic or not in the uterus where it should be. As far as identification of the early intrauterine pregnancy, the first thing that is visualized is called the yolk sac, which is often seen around 6 to 7 weeks gestation. And this is a small ring in the uterine cavity, as you can see in the photos. The next notable part of the fetus to develop is the small mass of tissue adjacent to the yolk sac, which is the fetal pole. This is the first sign of the developing embryo. However, especially in very early intrauterine pregnancy, only the yolk sac may be visible with no fetal pole. As discussed before, one of the reasons for the transabdominal ultrasound in early pregnancy is to rule out an ectopic pregnancy. And to do this, even if one does identify an intrauterine pregnancy, it's still important to fully evaluate the adnexa fully to rule out an ectopic. There would be higher suspicion for ectopic pregnancy in a patient with symptoms like severe unilateral pelvic pain, vomiting, and then if they do develop lightheadedness, hypotension, or tachycardia, which may be concerning for a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Since ruptured ectopic pregnancies can lead to a lot of bleeding, there may be free fluid seen on ultrasound, as well as worsening or severe pain, and then eventually signs of hemorrhagic shock if the ruptured ectopic was not discovered in time before it ruptured. And it's also possible for a patient to have an intrauterine pregnancy and an ectopic if they're receiving fertility treatment, so have higher suspicion for these patients. In general, ectopic pregnancy risk factors include pregnancy with an IUD in place, prior ectopic pregnancies, history of STIs or pelvic inflammatory disease, fertility treatments, or prior pelvic surgeries. The important measurements in transabdominal ultrasound in early pregnancy are the crown rump length, which is used for dating in the first trimester up to about 13 weeks. This measures the fetus ideally in neutral position, not hyperflexed or hyperextended, and you can select the crown rump length measurement on the ultrasound, drag the calipers from the longest axis of the fetal pole, which is from crown to rump, and it should give you a gestational age estimation. Later in pregnancy, generally after 13 weeks, you can either use the biparietal diameter or the femur length to assess the gestational age. For the biparietal diameter, you want to look at the axial view at the widest part of the skull between the parietal bones and use the caliper to measure from the outer edge of the proximal skull to the inner edge of the distal skull. And you can also select the appropriate calculation on the ultrasound to help actually calculate once you have the caliper measurements. For the femur length, we want to measure the ossified diaphysis, so the more blunt ends of the femur, and we want to avoid measuring the pointy parts, which are the epiphysis. To confirm fetal heart rate, we want to make sure that we can visualize the cardiac activity on the fetus, which you'll see as a flickering in the chest. This is generally visible around 7 weeks via transabdominal ultrasound. And for this measurement, we want to select M mode. And so you'll select M mode, you'll place the calipers through the fetal heart, and it should come up with a fetal heart rate tracing where you can calculate the heart rate using the M mode. For this, we want to use M mode rather than Doppler because Doppler uses too much energy for the fetus. And so the M mode has less concern for the thermal energy to the fetus. We want to see a heart rate of about 110 to 160 beats per minute. If there is fetal tachycardia sustained over 160 beats per minute or sustained fetal bradycardia less than 110 beats per minute for more than 10 minutes, we definitely want to reach out with our OB-GYN colleagues for further fetal assessment. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation on transabdominal ultrasound in pregnancy, and I hope you find this information useful.